Hello, everybody. Today I want to talk about the devil, not to create fear, but to impart knowledge. Too many times I hear believers not really praying strategically against the devil. Some of them even believe he's actually a metaphor, that he's not even real, things like that. So I thought today I would cover him, and also because I think covering him will be best for where I'm going to head in the future with some of the topics I'm going to cover. So I'm going to read a few scriptures and then give my thoughts and opinions on them. Uh, the first one is Genesis 3, chapter 1 through 4. It says, "Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made, and said to the woman, Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman replied, We may eat fruit from trees in the garden, but God did say, You must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die. And then the serpent replied, You will not certainly die." So that's number one. Now, underneath the definition for subtle, I looked up just some extra words, and we've got, because it talks about now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. We've got crafty, skillful, underhand, and then I added he's very, very cunning. So one thing I want to talk about today is how the smartest thing the devil ever did was to convince people he's not real. Okay, it's kind of I don't even want to say it's comical, because it's not comical, but it's astounding how much people deny his existence, but the whole world worships him. And it really speaks. I don't want to give him any kind of credit, but it really speaks to just how cunning he is, and he's obviously has a little more knowledge than we like to believe. Okay, again, this is not an attempt to glorify him. What this is an educational video about the reality of where we really are. Okay, so just keep in mind the smartest thing he ever did was to convince people he's not real. I mean, we've got, like I said, if you've watched any TV show, any music video, any Super Bowl performance, anything like that, you can see the devil being worshipped all over the place. And now we don't do that to what I find even more astounding is that we don't do that to other religions. Okay, it's just the devil. It's Satan. And I understand some of it's, taboo. Ooh, we're not supposed to do this, so we're going to do it. Yada yada yada. But there's so much of it going on. We have to call it more than taboo. It's just outright worship, and there's nothing else to call it. You guys, I think to deny that it's a form of worship, and to just blatantly go against all the things written in the Bible and run towards the things that the world does as far as it concerns the devil, it's a form of worship, and it also empowers him. And that's what he originally wanted, was to be worshipped. And we're going to get there in a minute. Okay. So I wanted to call that out. I may have heard I think what I said earlier is that I may have stolen that from someone else who said the smartest thing he ever did. I can't remember who it was, but it's very, very true. It was highly intelligent of him to act like he doesn't exist and that you're crazy for believing that he exists, when it's so entrenched in our culture that it's not even funny. Excuse me. So Ephesians 6:12 says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." We're going to cover more about what that means in the next couple of days, but for right now, I'm just going to leave it at that. But what I wanted to add to that verse was that sounds a lot like an organized kingdom, doesn't it? I mean, not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That sounds strategic. So The next one is 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. And it says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." And this is where I kind of just want to touch on offensive warfare. The Christian, the typical church, the typical Christian, we kind of sit around and just wait for the devil to attack before we go into what I call defensive warfare. I actually learned some of this language from an ex-satanic high priest who became saved, and he was just right on point with saying that the Christian is we go into defensive warfare. We just think, oh, we're going to wait for the devil to attack instead of acknowledging what God has already said, that there's a devil, that he hates you, that he operates on this earth, and that he's coming after you, and he doesn't just want you dead, he wants you dead and in hell. Like, he's not playing. This is real. This is very real to him. And I think the Christian really, we need to get better at acknowledging that. And then I think what would happen as a result of that is that we would have more offensive warfare. I think the guy who taught me this he says he wakes up, and instead of waiting for the devil to come after him, he says, I'm coming after you today in my prayers, because he knows that the devil's going to attack him. And so, yes, Christ defeated the devil at the cross, but the devil continues. He's going to continue to come after the Christian and to try and make your life, he's going to try to make your life challenging in every way he can. And that's another reason why it would be a good idea to learn and understand some strategic warfare. We're going to cover a little bit of that here in a couple of days when we go further into this topic. So I'm going to get ready to close, but I want to read one more. Matthew 4:9 says, the devil took Jesus to a very high mountain and showed him the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. He said, all of this I will give you if you bow down and worship me. And so the biggest thing to notice here is that he's actually talking to God and telling him, I will take you and give you all these kingdoms and show you these kingdoms. And you notice God didn't argue with him about whose kingdoms they were. That goes back to the written word, where if we read this whole Bible from beginning to end, God has a whole story in here where he's told you what's happened with this. And people love to mock and say this isn't true, this didn't happen, yada, yada, yada. Again, while the whole world worships the devil right there in your face, and then act like he doesn't exist. So basically, he wants to be worshipped. If you look at some of these things in the Bible and you see some of the things that Satan does, everything Satan does mimics God's kingdom. Everything that the devil does mimics that. And I think if people really would open their eyes and pay attention, they would really be able to see that, and they would probably go into strategic prayers. And now, don't get me wrong, because Jesus defeated the devil at the cross. I want to make that abundantly clear. Jesus defeated the devil, but he's still working, and he's still playing chess. He wants to checkmate you. He's trying to checkmate you every chance he gets. So, and I want to show further how that's true. I want to talk more about, I'm going to share some personal testimony just from different people and go into a little more detail about this and see where we go from there. And I feel like this will be a really good topic before I go into some of the other topics I'm going to discuss over the next couple of weeks. So that's all I got for today. But I want you to think about, one thing I want you to think about is just how everything the devil does mimics what God has already done. I want you to really, really think about that, because we're going to talk more about that. All right. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope everyone has a blessed day.